For those of y'all that don't know me, I'm Trey Price. I'm an extension and research plant pathologist. I'm based out here out of the Macon Ridge Research Station in Winnsboro. We work closely with Dr. Steve Harrison, our wheat breeder here at LSU, on a number of different fronts. But I want to welcome you to the station and make sure that you know that this is your station. You're welcome here anytime. Just give us a call if you've got questions or if you want to see anything. It's no problem. What I have behind me here is it's funded by the U.S. Wheat, Barley, and Scab Initiative. And if you're not familiar with scab, it's also known as Fusarium head blight. It's a fungal disease caused by Fusarium graminearum and some other species as well. That fungus infects wheat heads at flowering, and it causes yield losses and quality losses. There's also a toxin associated with this particular fungus called deoxynivalenol, which is also known as DON. If growers have too much DON in their wheat, it can get turned away at the elevator. And we've had that situation a number of times here in Louisiana. 5 over the past 6 seasons, there have been major scab epidemics in the state. With the exception of the 2018 season, we had really nice wheat. We had 0 scab, and that was because it was the weather. Scab, that fungus prefers warm, wet, rainy weather. If you have those conditions when your wheat's flowering, you need to apply a protective fungicide for management. And the thing is, we've got several fungicides that are effective. We've got about 4 choices there. That's a good thing. The bad news is the best that you can expect out of that fungicide application is 50% control. So, and that's if you put it out by ground with massive amounts of water, right? So we have to have another tool in our toolbox to manage this disease, and that tool is resistant varieties, and that's what this trial behind me is all about. This is what we call our scab nursery. It's very small plots. I would take y'all out there, but we don't have scab symptoms out there yet, so we'd kind of be wasting our time walking around. We're going to have scab show up in there in about 7 to 10 days. But we have very small plots out there. You know, they're kind of like hedgerows. It contains our early maturing and our normal maturing OVT. It contains our uniform southern scab nursery, sun wheat material, which is a breeders group in the southern United States. And Dr. Harrison, feel free to correct me if I get any of these acronyms wrong. Our Gulf Atlantic wheat nursery entries, and there's about 100 F2 and F3 segregating populations out there. So what you'll have is you'll have individuals in those populations that are susceptible, and you'll have individuals that are resistant. So we'll go through and actually tape the heads that don't have scab, and they'll save that seed to move forward in the breeding process. What we do is we plant these plots, manage them just like we manage the rest of our wheat crop. We'll isolate the fungus from scabby seed from the previous year. I grow it in the laboratory on sterilized millet. We grow it in these big plastic bags with vents, so we can mass produce. Not millet, we would grow it on corn. I do millet on other things. So sterilized corn, which is to note that corn is an alternative host for this particular pathogen. So, and I think that's a lot of the reason why we've seen an increase in scab epidemics in Louisiana is the increase in corn production over the past decade, and also the adoption of minimum tillage or no-till practices. So that's the inoculums out there, especially if you follow a corn crop with wheat, you definitely have a higher risk to developing scab. But once we grow the inoculum in the lab, we'll come out, we'll spread it out on a table, let it dry out. Come out here and inoculate each plot with a given amount of that scabby corn seed, and about 2 weeks later that corn turned black. Well, those are ascospores, and that's production of ascospores by the fungus. Wind and the rain will move those ascospores around during flowering, and those spores will go into the wheat heads, and infection occurs. And we increase our chances here by inoculating the plots. And also you can see we have our little sprinkler heads out there. Well, we had a water line installed here, and it's just like one that would run to your house. Well, there's not much pressure on it. So we've got a little electronic timers on these. We'll run running 2 sprinklers at a time successively, and we'll irrigate these plots 2 or 3 times, or I think it's 3 times during the night for 15 minutes. So you have that constant misting and constant moisture. So you have your conditions. If we have warm weather, we can really challenge Dr. Harrison's entries here in this variety trial. So this is the process. I hope I've described it to this. This is an important part of the process in developing varieties that are resistant to scab, and that's usually the best way to manage a disease is with the resistant variety. So, Dr. Harrison, you have anything to add?
I was going to add that genetic resistance is the other way of controlling scab, and the two are additive. So if you get a variety that is moderately resistant, which is about as good as you can get, to Fusarium head blight, and you add that to a good fungicide, then you can get a very high level of control. So it's a controllable disease. The breeders in the eastern U.S. have spent a tremendous effort and time and resources developing scab-resistant varieties in the last 12 years or so, and we're getting there. This test and the one that Dr. Paget has at Alexandria are the basis of our categorization of varieties that you see in the annual wheat report. So if it is above average for 2 years in these misted trials, then we're going to call it moderately resistant. If it's below average, moderately susceptible, and if it's just hammered, then it's going to be classified as susceptible. And that's important information for you to have when you start choosing varieties. It's not just yield, but test weight and disease resistance are also very important.
Any questions?